everybody, a happy Sunday. I hope that wherever you are and whatever you are doing, you are having a really fantastic weekend. It's going to be a hot one here in the foothills of the Coast Range. It is Friday when I am filming this, but I know that we have a fire warning alert from now through until I think Monday, and we may lose our power because of high winds and potential for forest fires. And if you are affected by forest fires right now, I hope that you are able to stay safe. I know that many of us have been watching the absolutely terrifying stuff that's been going on in Hawaii this past week, and if you are affected by that, my thoughts go out to you. Which brings me to today's Sunday musing. And it's inspired by a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with someone on Mastodon. And the general gist of the conversation went along the lines of, why are we bothering to drive electric cars, to try and use less fossil fuels, to try and use renewable energy sources, to try and be more responsible consumers, to compost, to use as little plastic as possible, to try not to fly everywhere because we're all screwed and it's too late, and the individual impact of one person is of no consequence when big oil companies are continuing to pollute and make literally billions on profits every year, when governments are refusing to step up to the plate and do the thing that needs to be done in order to make it possible for everybody to transition to cleaner, greener, safer, smarter and more equitable forms of transportation and energy. And, you know, when the ultra rich of the world, including people like Elon Musk, are jumping on jet planes and going to meetings on other sides of the country or the other side of the planet, seemingly at the drop of a hat, when they could do what the rest of us do. Go and sit in front of a computer and make a Zoom call. I know some of you have also called out us and other YouTubers who cover the world of clean cars and green energy and say, why do you fly across the country to expensive hotels to attend car launches when you could just do it virtually instead? Now, of course, I'm going to go backwards. In the case of car launches, yes, if it's just a product briefing or it's just a launch and we don't actually get any physical time with something that we can touch and feel and interact with, yeah, we should all be staying at home and not going. When it comes to a test drive, when it comes to a launch event where we're actually behind the wheel and we're able to record our experiences, that is a very difficult situation because we have to physically be where a vehicle is. And if we waited for a vehicle to come onto a local press fleet, very often we would miss out. So we have to do that kind of tightrope balance between, do we stay home and do the ecologically minded thing, or do we go try and have a smaller carbon footprint as possible, drive or take the train if it's possible, and then, you know, record our thoughts on the ground. And it's always been a difficult thing for us to try and get our head around. I know that I personally try not to fly whenever possible, and I encourage family members to drive rather than to fly. For example, I haven't been back to the UK. Prior to this year, I hadn't been back to the UK for a number of years. And when I went for work, and it was a work trip, I combined that with a visit to see my mum. So I try and make sure that if I do make a long distance trip, that long distance trip is multiple things rolled into one. Now, in terms of why bother when bigger companies, other people, rich people, insert name of organisation or people here, are basically screwing the planet and don't care. So to the subject of why bother, and if you notice a slight jump, it's because I had to stop recording to have a cough. The why bother is a tough one, right? Because you are quite right. Big corporations, big automakers, big companies, and the top 1% of society in terms of earning. They all can do things that a lot of us cannot afford to do. And they could, should they choose to, make a massive impact on our climate by not flying everywhere, by investing in renewable energy. And some of them do, right? And you could argue, for example, someone like Elon Musk, who flies a lot, and there's obviously that Elon Musk flight tracker. A lot of people could argue, and many do, that, oh, it's okay because he is trying to transition the world to a clean, green future. I would personally dispute that these days based on some of his decisions in the last couple of years. But in general, I think it's accepted that large corporations don't care. They are more interested in making money, and therefore, what can the actions of one individual do? But I think my response to that is, by being conscious about what we are doing as individuals, by encouraging our friends, our family and our colleagues to all start being more mindful about our energy resources, our energy use, and the planet on which we live, I think you can actually make a noticeable difference. Maybe I'm naive. It's something that I have personally felt very strongly about ever since this channel was established, by showing people what's available, by showing people how to go about making a change, and by giving people real believable paths that they can actually aspire to or follow along with. You're more likely to encourage people to go in a direction that is good for everybody, rather than just sitting back and going, well, these big people are not doing what they should be doing, so I'm not going to bother either. Individual carbon reductions can and do make a difference, but more importantly, when an individual gets involved in a more ecologically sound way of living, when they encourage other people to do that, they bring attention to the world around them, and it means that more people are more likely to turn around and say to world governments, hey, what you are doing right now sucks monkey balls, and it would be really kind if you would stop doing that. And sometimes the government will ignore them. And then the citizens come back and they go, yes, by the way, that thing we asked you to do that you didn't do, you're going to do it now. And if the government says no, then obviously people power can affect political decisions. I think that is probably best demonstrated by what happened this week in the state of Ohio in the US, where there was a vote on whether the state would change the percentage of votes required to make a constitutional amendment. And up for a vote was the proposition that it be changed from a 51% majority to 60% majority, i.e. in order to make a constitutional amendment, you had to get 60% of the voting public to agree to that change. That failed because the reason that that amendment was being pushed through was because the state legislators wanted to make it harder for abortion provision to be made accessible in the state. That is a measure that's going to be on the ballot later this year. And they wanted to make it harder for pro-choice advocates to go, hey, we want people to have access to birth control and abortion access and reproductive health care. And I think that showed categorically that when a voting population feels strongly about something, even though it's little individual groups of people, if they all get together, they can affect a change and they can move a government in a particular direction. In a similar way, as we've seen with boycotts of certain brands, which has become a thing this year, whether you're talking about brands being boycotted because they were particularly terrible to a group of people, whether they were homophobic or transphobic, or on the flip side, whether that group, that company or that organization were being seen as being woke by the other side of the political coin, i.e. we are not going to buy this product because it promotes things that we don't agree with, you can see that that does move the lever in a particular direction. The challenge, though, and this is kind of going way off into the weeds, is that capitalism sometimes doesn't make it easy for people to vote with their pocket if they are in a position where they feel trapped. If you don't have another alternative to X, Y, or Z, it's difficult to then go, I am taking a stand against this company or against its practices because they have me locked in. It is something I personally feel right now with Starlink. As I have discussed before on this channel, Starlink is a company that I currently have a contract with. We use Starlink to download footage very often for this channel when we're making 10. Our local slow internet provider, while it is great, is not particularly quick. And when we are making 10, we need to download all of the footage as quickly as possible. Now, you could argue we made a decision to live here in the country, which we did. We made a decision to choose this lifestyle. And yes, by supporting Starlink, which is obviously owned by Elon Musk, we are being hypocritical because I personally do not agree with many of Elon Musk's current political leanings or proclamations. And I don't like some of the attacks that he has been engaging in for a community that I am part of. And the challenge as a consumer is, well, I don't want to give that company or that man my money, but there isn't an alternative. And so I am trapped. You know, I have to choose between, do I have no internet? Or do I kind of just hope that one day someone else comes along that gives me a better internet? And we are actively looking. So I can understand the why bother when other companies and the 1%ers and everybody else is not bothering. But I'm hoping that as a community, as an organisation of people, whether they are disparate individuals or whether we are, clubbed together as the viewers of Transport Evolved or, a particular organisation that promotes electric vehicles and clean energy, we individually can all make a difference, because when we all make a difference, we all make a change. As a whole, we make an impact on the wider world and large multinationals, governments and super rich individuals. I think that's how I feel about it, but I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below. So let me know. Is it worth us making all this change? Is it worth us investing a lot of time and money and sometimes blood, sweat and tears into making a transition to a cleaner, greener, safer, smarter and more equitable future when big corporations, some world governments and the ultra rich don't seem to be bothering all that much? And on that note, with a magic appearance of my phone, we are done with today's video. If you do have comments, you can drop them below. You can leave them either here on the YouTube channel or here on the PeerTube channel. Do you see what I did there? Because you can watch it on either channel. You can also leave your thoughts in the Discord chat room if you fancy it, or you can reach out to us on our Patreon page if you are a Patreon member. You will also find links below to Ko-fi, Bitcoin and our swag store, as well as Mastodon and PeerTube if you have not discovered them yet. Scrolling on my right is the list of amazing charged up supporters, and shout outs go out to our V2G Patreon supporters. They are Alan Tupper, Andrew Martin, Bennett Elder, Brophy Wolf, Chris Mackerel, Cyprian Laplace, Dan Blair, Gordon C, Hay Esker, John Trammell, Carl Fox, Mark Eggleton, Peter Dillinger, Regine Fellows, Sean Tucker, Stefan Fremgen, Stephen Williams, Tesla in the Gong, Paul Bricknell, Tony Moss, Carl Hodgson, Chris Centaur, Denny Hyde, Lance Lyle, Linda Irish, Mike Weeder and Paul Nelson. And finally, big thanks to our off-grid supporters. They are Paul Conway, Kevin Burrowbridge, Stephen O'Donoghue, Jim Burness, Robert Flannery, Aaron Hahn, Ellery Hansley, Rory Litwin, JP Fagerback, Dave Kitchen, Andrew Glenn, Anonymous Freak, Chris and Michael Johnson, Clay Witt, CPU Freak 101, Eric Knack, Joe Bresney, John Henderson, Laura Reynolds, Marcel Ward, Matthew Drobnak, Nigel S, Reggie Watts, Will Graylin, and of course, Ian. Don't forget that we make video content every Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday on this channel, on the other channel, This is Transport Evolved Take 2. And then on this channel at the weekend, you'll find our chicken and garden update and our Sunday musing. If you haven't watched the chicken and garden update yet, it's all about all the blackberries that we've got behind me. It's time to make some blackberry jam. And on that note, whatever you enjoy next, I hope your weekend is a great one. And until next time, keep evolving.